Hey everybody, this is Sheets and Happy New Year. And we are going to be doing the first NBA slate review of the year. A very nice little four-game slate, which has a little bit of everything. And again, this is the time where people make New Year's resolutions and things of that nature. My comment to you would be if you were waiting till New Year's to make your resolutions, you're probably doing it wrong. You should not rely on an arbitrary date to change the way you go about doing things, but that's okay. I guess you all knew that already, but better now than some other time. So we're just going to go through this slate the same way that we go through all of them. Uh, for those of you that have been watching these with me for a while, you know my process, and we're going to continue doing that and see if the process can lead me to or lead us to a certain type of build that is going to be good for GPPs. Let's see what happens. So pick number 1 to 4. I don't know. So let's start with the third game, I guess. So the third game, Minnesota against Milwaukee, is kind of a mess with respect to injuries and rotations and things like that. But yet, on the other hand, it's not really a mess because we at least have the news that we are looking for. That's the thing that's been a little tilting about some of these games of late is that they just kind of wait a little bit too long for us to release the news. But with this game, they have already announced that Cat and Wiggins are going to be out again, and Teague is going to be doubtful. So we kind of know what's going to happen, or at least we can at least reasonably guess what's going to happen with respect to minutes. And the projection systems have been very efficient in catching up with that. So you would think that what would happen is that all these guys on Minnesota would that are going to be starting, we're going to project really really well, and some of them project pretty well, but some not as well, and nobody kind of through the roof, and all of them are coming with kind of high ownership. So if you're going to play these games with these chalk reserves, or with these reserves, make sure you're not you know make sure you're not spending your money on low upside guys that are going to be highly owned. Um, this game specifically, there's a lot of risk associated with this game just because, Milwaukee's going to be, what, a 20-point favorite in this. So you really don't know with any degree of certainty whether these guys are even going to get full run or, I mean, quite honestly, whether they're either going to be able to put up decent numbers. I mean, Milwaukee's a really good defensive team, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Minnesota to stay competitive in this game. So compared to some of the other chalky lower price guys who we're going to get to later, I think that the Minnesota guys do carry with them an amount of risk. So as usual, it's going to come down to um, you know which of them are low enough owned relative to their upside to make them playable in GPPs, and which of them are just kind of blah. Because from a game stack perspective, this game is a train wreck, right? Where it's not our goal to predict blowouts. I mean, Vegas has done a pretty good job of doing this for us, and to stack the game, just hoping that these Minnesota, reserves can keep this close, such that Giannis can get, 36 minutes is very very difficult. So this is not really the type of game I'm going to be stacking. Um, but with that said, you also have to go and check and see what type of minutes projections these points projections are based on. Like, not to skip around team for team, but if you were thinking of playing Giannis, okay, in fairness, let's take a look at this. They're projecting him for only 28 minutes. I mean, he's projecting to be a pretty good value at 11-2. And it's not as if they're projecting him for 36 minutes and you have to worry about the blowout. They're already only projecting him for 28 minutes. They're factoring in a good amount of blowout risk in the projection, to the point where I would actually say that there is more upside from his minute projection than there is downside. I mean, I don't know if there's really a road for them to only play him, say, 24 minutes. I mean, he is still the superstar. I mean, when's the last time you saw a guy actually only play a full, like, 24 minutes? I mean, he's going to get, you know, I don't know how they rotate him nowadays, but sometimes if they play him 12 minutes in the first half, first quarter, then another six. I mean, he's going to start out with 18. I would really say that 28 minutes might be his, not being the expert on minutes projections, but I would say that would be closer to his floor than a median. But whatever. He is the superstar who people are paying money to see. I mean, they're not going to just run him out there for 20 minutes, you know? So I would say that 28 minutes would be more towards his floor than anything else. That plus the fact that he hasn't been that great the last couple of days since he got kind of embarrassed on Christmas. I think he's due, so to speak. He's looking for an opportunity to put up a really good game. So I think it's possible that Giannis becomes kind of sneaky here. Now, I'm not going to say sneaky because, I mean, obviously he's going to carry ownership, but it's not as if he's going to carry 40, 50% ownership. So I think that the fear of a blowout might actually keep his ownership low. And the thing is that, again, the blowout risk has pretty much been factored into a lot of these projection systems, and he's still looking to be pretty decent. And I do think there's upside from that. So I do think that Giannis could be kind of a good play. The thing is, I don't know if I want to stack the game. Okay, but if I were going to stack the game, let's put it that way. Let's review which of the Minnesota guys are projecting to be good. I mean, it's honestly the four guys plus one, actually 4.5 guys. So we're talking about the guys that have been playing a lot, like Jang, uh, Covington. He looks pretty good, but they don't look great. Like, none of these guys look great. And you know what I think it is? I think it's because all these guys also carry some blowout risk too. So they're not giving these guys full minutes either. So Culver, he looks okay, and he's also been priced up. Shabazz Napier, they've actually done a pretty good job of doing this. So Napier's already been priced up 5,800. So that's why these guys aren't projecting well, is because DraftKings did a pretty good job of pricing these guys up. So Noah Vonleh, he's probably the one guy that they haven't really adjusted yet because he hasn't really put up that many minutes, but he's definitely, I would say, from a value perspective, probably, I don't want to say the most attractive because none of them look that great, but what is he listed as? Center? Oh, power forward and center? Where'd he even go? I know he's somewhere. Oh, as a power forward center, sorry. So, he's listed as questionable also? Well, if he's out, then you're back to like Naz Reid, things like that. But again, none of these guys look that great. I mean, you think they would, but again, as I said, they have been kind of priced up a little bit. Kalen Martin, he's a guy that's not really projecting all that great, and he had a really good game, so he might end up being overowned relative to his projections. And when I look at the ownership projections, that's exactly what I see, actually. On DraftKings, Kalen Martin is projected to be the highest owned of these guys, at what, 40% plus, and he's not projecting all that great. So for me, that would be a good place to start getting leverage here, is if in fact Kalen Martin is 40%, to kind of just fade him. That gives you instant leverage, and it's not as if he's just some lock or anything like that. Like I said, it does carry amount of blowout risk, and they're projecting for 29 minutes. I mean, he's really going to get 29 minutes in every variation of this game. I don't know about that. So the one guy I would say is the lowest owned of these guys. Well, again, this is all preliminary because these ownership projections have been pretty fishy recently at all the sites that I go to. But like if you see like Robert Covington at 5% or Napier at 6%, I mean, you can try those, but I don't think they're going to be that low owned. I just don't. But if you do see that, if you see, go check ownership projections and see that these guys are going to be really low owned, then I think Covington would probably be a good place to go. But again, so you see that like the stacking business is going to be very difficult in this game. But Giannis, I do think he has upside from these minutes projections, which means that you know he's probably a decent play. All right, so let's go back. Which way you want to go first? All right, we'll go to the Portland New York game, which is kind of a fun game. It's not a game that's replete with value, that has a lot of value, but it's got all kinds of tremendous narratives here. So, uh, not the least of which, actually, not the least of which, the greatest of which is freaking Carmelo. Carmelo coming back to New York. Love it. Um, there's also, and I wish Bobby were here because there's some. I don't really feel like looking for it, but there's some sneaky CJ McCollum narrative, or where his like girlfriend is from New York or something, or maybe it's just Brooklyn. I don't know. I don't remember the whole thing, but there used to be something where CJ McCollum would come back to New York and get an extra bit of motivation. But the main extraneous narrative here is Carmelo coming back. And I have to say that I'm not too interested in Carmelo as a play here, but I will say again, when we discuss narratives and whether they have effect on things or not, I will say that some of them do, but you just can't project them. It doesn't mean that doesn't exist though. So what I would say is this: if Carmelo in fact is coming back to New York and intending to kind of just try to put on a show or whatever, I think all that does is just you know kind of just decrease possible projections of Lillard and McCollum. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that great of a deal. Look, I mean, he's very happy to be back playing. And it's Lillard's basketball. You know what I mean? He's gonna. I mean, they're not gonna just give the ball to Anthony, let him go to work. Portland's not exactly been tearing it up in the win column. They need these wins, so it's not like, oh, let's come all the way out to New York so that Carmelo can shoot the ball 25 times. I don't think it's going to work that way. So I think that net, I think that the narrative thing in this game is a little bit is kind of specious. So let's just kind of look at it as a regular game. You know, in a 4-game slate with one of them being blowouts, actually with one of them rating to be a blowout, and the fourth one not looking so competitive either. I mean, it's kind of good to find a game with a kind of a tight spread. So Portland at New York, a 4-point spread is pretty appealing if you can find guys that project well on both sides, and you are actually finding that. So Portland, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. Your main 4 guys are all projecting to be pretty good plays. Not that being Lillard and McCollum and Whiteside again, right? And Anthony does project to be okay, but kind of below those 3. Now, with respect to ownership, we're going to go back to the New York side in a second. With respect to ownership, Whiteside and, believe it or not, Carmelo is projected to be 25% owned. I guess they have to be factoring in some kind of narrative bump here, because I mean that seems a little egregious, especially the way he's projecting. So, I mean, if he's 25% owned, I'll probably have 0 of him. But Hassan Whiteside is projecting really, really, to be very highly owned, 25% or so. But the other guys, I mean, I don't know how this is possible, but Lillard's only projecting to be 10%. Listen, I could make the case that you could play Lillard at 10% on any 14-game slate that you could find. I mean, imagine if he's in a 4-game slate with this, where it's not like you're giving up that much to get him. If he's really 10%, I mean that's free money, with respect to projections relative to ownership. I mean, I have to say. So, I mean, start with that. One other guy, which I'm going to continue to call, I don't like to use the word tout, but to kind of just keep you guys on, is, again, this is just kind of a basketball thing, is less than a projection / analysis thing, is Anthony Simons. He's been getting more minutes. He's been getting more crucial minutes. He's been closing to in some senses. So, they like what they see in him. So I do think he continue to have upside from these minutes. And when you're playing these close games with overtime vig, to have a guy that you think can end up playing the overtime is really big. So so Anthony Simons is a guy who is, I'm telling you, he's not going to project all that well right now, but he's projecting to be okay. And at 3,400 with all these other 3,400 guys, well, not all these. I mean, that actually with some of these guys priced up from Minnesota, there aren't a lot of 3,400 guys out there. So he could actually be a really, really good play here. If you want to get Giannis in and one of these Laker guys in. So just keep an eye on guys like him. As opposed to guys like Kent Bazemore. See, the way I look at these guys, like Bazemore, I think is kind of trending down as far as their trust in him. They'll give him minutes, but I think that in crunch time, he's not going to be looked to for much. And I think that Simons is kind of on the way up. So I feel as though, especially in GPPs, I'd rather play guys like Simons over Bazemore, unless, obviously one of them is that more highly owned than the other one. So I would play Lillard first. CJ McCollum looks like a good play also. I would not play both of them together in most variations. And Whiteside looks good, but he's popular. But that doesn't mean you can't play him. But, you're just going to have to use other lower-owned guys to make those lineups work. So it would be nice, as I like to say, if there were some decently projecting guys on the New York side that aren't that highly owned either. And the good news is, well, the bad news is nobody's projecting to be that great of a value on the other side. The four guys that look the best are going to be, no secret, are going to be the four main scorers. That's going to be R.J. Barrett, Elf Payton, Marcus Morris, and Julius Randle. So they're all projected to be just kind of okay, and they're all projected to be about 15% plus owned. So there's not a lot of, just juicy vig in running the Portland guys back with the New York guys. But it's not as if it's that bad either. In other words, like if you're taking Lillard at only 12%, and again, we're presuming this is the case. I still don't believe it, and you run it back with guys like, these Knick guys who are not projecting all that great, their ownership is just kind of excessive too. I consider this stack situation maybe a B. You know what I mean? Maybe a B minus. I mean, it's good in that you have the close spread and where the usage is coming from. But I still use my poker analogy, right? Poker comes down to three things: no limit hold'em, right? You need hand strength, aggression, and position. If you have all three of those things, you're in really great shape. But if you're not going to have all three, you should at least have two of them. And likewise, when it comes to these types of plays, these types of stacks, I'd rather have at least two. Like I'd rather have a good stack, good correlation, and good projections and low ownership. I'd love all three, but I at least would write two. And I just don't think that the combination of kind of crappy projections and kind of blah ownership is enough to make this kind of a really good stacking situation. I mean, I give it a B minus. Let's put it that way. But to rank these guys, I don't really want to rank them. I mean, they're all fine. I mean, Peyton, Barrett, Morris, Randall. I really think that they're all pretty much the same. So if you want to play them as one-offs, you want to go 1v1s, just pick one of them, or something like that. But I think full stacking is just giving up a little too much with respect to the ownership game. Now, again, that all presumes that I'm wrong on my Lillard projection as far as ownership goes. If he's actually 10%, then never mind. Play Lillard with all those guys. Two or three of them if you want, and then hope because you get a Lillard versus the entire Knicks show and go to overtime and kill people. Any specials on the New York side? Any low-owned guys I could throw in? You might hear a little bit about Damian Dotson. Again, for 3,200, I'm not going to talk you off of him. I mean, I guess he's fine. I would prefer someone like Simons over Dotson. just because, again, he's got that closing vig to him. So between those two, I would err towards Simons. I think he's got more upside than Dotson. Mitchell Robinson is not projecting all that well today. I sometimes play him, but it's not popping enough for me. Okay, so the last two games, Phoenix, LA. What do you want to do first? I'd love to randomize this, but you know what? Wait on the Orlando one. We'll do the Orlando one last. That's kind of my favorite, so let's do that one last. So Phoenix, LA. It's so funny, First of all, on the Phoenix side, I just don't get it. It's a good thing that I'm kind of unbiased because it's kind of hard to not be. So like when I look at some of these projection systems and I see like Rubio projecting for the same amount of fantasy points as Devin Booker at pretty much the same price. Like to me, again, maybe just because I play Booker so much that I'm just kind of overly biased towards him. But to me, it's like a joke, right? I mean, like for those of you that watch the basketball games and even game log or whatever, I mean, Booker has 60-point upside every game, and he's tremendous, and Rubio sucks. But again, it's very difficult. Maybe that's a real leak of mine. I guess it's a leak of a lot of ours. Is that when you see projections and you say, "Well, this just can't be right." But do you have to trust the projections? No. I mean, maybe there's just maybe they're just looking at data points and not looking at upside. But again, for me, I'm looking at one projection system that's showing Rubio and Booker being like dead even. I just don't see it. I mean, I would never in a million years play Rubio over Booker unless, and now this is the fun part, you look at ownership and Booker is projected to be about 25% owned, while Rubio is projected about 15% owned. But even so, I still think that that's not enough of a gap. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Rubio at 15% is any better. I mean, is any bargain compared to Booker at 25. Right? From a median projection, and certainly from an upside perspective. So I would certainly prefer Booker over Rubio. That's just kind of like one kind of thing on the side. So let's look at it. All right. So it's a not really a close spread. So the stackability of it is probably a C. But on the other hand, the good news is that if you were going to stack the game, I know exactly what I would want to do. Okay. Not exactly, but you'd want to take one of Davis or LeBron, and you'd want to run it back with Booker. I mean, 100%. If you were going to stack this game, I would not leave Booker out of any stack. Okay, you just can't do it. I mean, when you need to make up an 11-point spread and keep this game close, I mean, just Booker has to be in it. As far as the other guys on Phoenix, from a projection standpoint, Rubio, again, as I said, projections to be at the same as Booker, which is really not that great. I mean, neither of them project to be that good. Like all those Portland guys, just as a matter of, just to compare, project to have much better value than Booker Rubio. Then there's Kelly Oubre, who again, he's always kind of tilting, but he's usually a part of the stacks that I'll make. And then everybody else projects like kind of bad. Like Michael Bridges is projecting to be just another kind of like an okay 3,500 guy. So again, if you want another 3,500 guy to look at, you could look at him. But like, I still think Anthony Simons is going to be a significantly better play. But I shouldn't say significant. They're stupid 3,500 guys. I mean, anything's possible. So again, from a stacking perspective, I want to do that. I look at the LA side and I see, as almost it is usual now, that LeBron and Davis project to be just identical with respect to value. So I mean, just pick one of them. I mean, I wouldn't, I don't think I could get away with stacking this game and playing both of them. So you just have to pick one, and hopefully, maybe one of them is going to be lower owned. I mean, let's take a look at that. No, I mean, they're both going to be owned through the roof. So it just, again, doesn't look like this is going to be that great of an ownership stack. Although, no, you know what? Because Lillard is going to be 25%, so it's not really that great. you could make the argument that even though Lillard's going to be not Lillard, I meant Booker, that if Booker's going to be 25%, maybe the combination of him and AD or him and LeBron might be a little less. Again, accounting for those ownerships. But I do think that people are going to do a lot of that. They're going to play Booker with one of these guys. I guess if you're going to opt for lower ownership, I think that the stack of Booker and Davis might be a little lower owned, just because, again, what people have this thought of is if you want to stack players, you want to go have the guys that have the ball in their hands back and forth at each other. So maybe LeBron, Booker might be a better stack from from fantasizing the way it could go perspective. So maybe Davis, Booker as a stack could be a little bit lower, but that is kind of splitting hairs. Two guys I do want to emphasize. I want to bring up from this game. Actually, two on the Lakers side and one on the Phoenix side. On the Lakers side, Rondo is projected to be the next best guy, but not that great. One guy I do want to kind of include in my player pool, again, just, he's not projecting that well at all, but Kyle Kuzma, since he's come back from his injuries, has had a couple of really good games, and good for us. It was not his last one. So if you look at his last game, he had 7 fantasy points. He was a complete train wreck. He was 0 for 7. He was 0 for from the field and 3 fouls. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody could play him off of this line, but he did very, very well 2 games in a row before that. So, I mean, in my view, he's the third best player on the team. So, he is someone who's not going to project that well, but he is going to be, I think, I would hope, pretty low owned. I mean, here it says 15%. I was hoping to get a little less than that, but Kuzma could be a guy to kind of throw into your mix to kind of dechalkify your lineups a little bit. So one guy I want to bring up on the Phoenix side, and again, I don't know if it's today, but at some point, DeAndre Ayton is going to win a slate for somebody, or at least put up a really high score for somebody at low ownership. I mean, he's coming back from that injury, and they've been kind of managing his minutes and managing exposure a little bit. But I do notice that he's been getting a little more run, and he's actually a little more active, right? So I saw this when he played against Sacramento. I mean, he was very, very active in 33 minutes. And then they kind of just didn't really play him all that much these last 2 games. But I do think that, again, he has a lot of upside from these minutes. He is their future, and they are going to kind of run him. And the Lakers do play big. So, maybe this is the time where they kind of run him and see what they got with him. Let him play 32, 34 minutes, whatever it is. And, this could be, I don't know if this is the day. All right. But he's been sneaky decent. And the time you want to play him is off of that dud game, right? Where he did only have the 20 fantasy points. So this could be a guy. Again, he's not going to project well. I'm warning you. But at low ownership, and I presume he's going to be low owned. Let's take a look at him. 5% owned. Let's go. You know what I mean? Unless they announce some kind of minutes limit. I mean, they're projected for 28 minutes. I do think there's only upside from there, and I might filter him in again, not as a core, but again along with otherwise chalky lineups. I think that you can get away with that. So that's not too exciting. You do have a couple of interesting plays, and as I said, by the way, both LeBron and AD are both very, very good plays. So you go to this Orlando-Washington game, which is on its surface very similar to the Portland-New York game with respect to stackability because it's a close spread and, kind of high total. And it's also, in a way, similar to the Minnesota game with respect to injuries, right? Because both Washington and Orlando have issues here. Now, again, you're going to have to watch the injury news. But as of now, it seems as though Bradley Beal is going to be back and playing. Again, that is just the latest. what does it say here? He's practiced fully. I mean, that's got to be a good sign. So if he doesn't play, then you're back to all those Washington guys from yesterday, from the other day, like Jordan McRae, Troy Brown, Isaiah Thomas, Mahimi, guys like that. But assuming he plays, we have a different type of game because now it's going to be competitive, and you can stack it and things like that. So assuming he plays, Beal looks to be a very, very strong play. I mean, as a matter of fact, he's very comparable to Lillard with respect to his expected points and expected value. And looking at ownership, he's only projecting about 15% owned. So this is a very, very strong play. And if in fact you can run it back with Orlando guys in a close game, you are going to be, this is a really, really very good place to go. So with that said, we go to the Orlando side, and there's one play that's quote unquote easy, right? So Vooch is projecting to be an extremely strong play. We don't have to explain why, but he just is. I mean, they're playing Washington. Okay, Washington has no bigs. Vucevic is great. He's only 8,200, and he's projecting for 40, 45-ish points. He is looking to be a very, very good play. With respect to ownership, let's just take a look at him really quickly. Only 15%. I mean, that's not bad either. Okay. Now, the thing that you want to do, though, if you really want to get this right, I mean, if you really want to stack this game and have some fun, is you'll figure out what else to do on the Orlando side. Because here's the deal. The reason why some of these Orlando guys are going to project well is because they're playing against Washington. So for them, it's going to be a high-paced matchup. So that's why they're going to project well. So, but it turns out when you look at the projections, they don't look to be that great, okay? They're very similar to the Minnesota projections with respect to value. So what you're going to have to do here is prioritize by both ownership and context. In other words, Bobby and I have spoken about this before. Which of the guys in this game are going to most benefit from that pace-up matchup? And the reason why I bring that up is I'm not really saying the same thing about, because it's a pace-up matchup, that's why they project high. But when we're looking for upside, right, even above and beyond those projections, you want the guys that play fast because they even have more upside than the guys that just kind of play the way they play. And, the pace-upness of the game just kind of drag them along. If you can get a guy that has a pace-up style, those people you would think are going to get even more impacted by this. And if you can get them at low ownership, even better. So there's a key bit of injury news that you have to watch for, and that is whether Aaron Gordon is going to be out. He's questionable. If he plays, for example, and let's take a look at this. We didn't practice. First, it said he's going to miss. I'm presuming he's out. But, I mean, if he plays, it would be such a perfect matchup for him to even exceed his median. So he would be someone I would go after. But again, I just don't like to play these guys off of injuries where possible. So these other guys, they're all projected to be kind of okay. So there's Fournier, there's Terrence Ross, there's DJ Augustine, Markel Fultz, and Isaac. I'll tell you the two guys that for me have the most upside of all of those guys. Even Owundu is actually okay. I don't know if I'd go down to Bamba because that doesn't seem like the guy that would be, overtly impacted or overly impacted by this matchup. So even Owundu could be all right. I would even throw him in a stack. But two guys that stand out for me are, one is John Isaac, who, this seems like just a basketball. He's going to kill these people. I mean, this is just an awesome matchup because whatever Washington bigs that exist are going to be kind of glued to dealing with Vooch, and Isaac is like gonna just murder people. So he's got real big upside from his median. He is, I presume he's going to be highly owned though. Let's take a look at him. He is only 15%. So for me, I'm looking at Markel Fultz at 25% and Terrence Ross, who's very shooting dependent at 21%, and Fournier, who is just less of a ceiling guy at 20%. I would much prefer to go to Isaac than those three guys, if you want to know the truth. And the other guy who is projecting to be even lower owned than all those guys, who is a sneaky upside dude in these matchups, is this DJ Augustine. Okay? I've seen this a zillion times. I mean, you get him in a fast-paced matchup, he's going to get a lot of shots up, and he's gonna be in a really good position. So I think that my favorite guys, you factor in both context and ownership, are going to be Augustine and Isaac. Okay, so you can really do some damage, hopefully in a positive way, finding the right pieces on the Orlando side, and just I wouldn't even get too fancy. I would really just run it back with Beal and just have some fun. But again, if Beal doesn't play, I mean, I'm sure he's not, because every time I do this in-depth analysis of a game like this, literally as soon as I upload the video, it's just gonna, he's just gonna be ruled out, and then everybody's gonna have to go figure out whether to play Jordan McRae again or Troy Brown, and and those are the guys you probably have to play. But I'm just kind of hoping Beal's playing so that we can attack it in this way. So I think it looks like a pretty cool slate. I would rank these games as the following. I would rank the approaches, let's put it this way, as the following. My first, thing I would want to do is attack the Orlando game. I would try to stack Beal up with some of these Orlando guys. I think the next thing I might do before stacking the Portland game is try to kind of one-off this slate a little bit. Like do something with Giannis, all right, knowing that he's got upside from these projections, and then see if you could just kind of build around, kind of, I don't want to say lower owned, but kind of low owned one-offs. Like, again, I just keep going back to Lillard. I mean, am I that crazy to think that he's going to be low owned? Probably. Okay. So that's another way you can go is if you don't want to, stack the Orlando Washington game, you could play the one-off game on this slate, because there are a decent amount of these kind of okay owned guys that are projecting really well, like Lillard, Giannis. You could play Beal as a one-off if you wanted to also. And then the next thing I might do is play this Portland game, this Portland-New York stack a little bit, just because I know I'd play Lillard, and then these guys are going to be so brutal, the New York guys, just because they're projecting kind of like crap and their ownership is going to be too high. It's probably a bad idea, but at least this is what I would probably end up doing. If I did play kind of a chalkier type build like that, like with Lillard, who's probably going to be higher owned, let's say I do this. Let's say I went Lillard and then Whiteside, which makes sense. And let's say we would get, Peyton. Can you do all these guys? Probably not. Let's say you went Peyton and Randall. Then what you would do is you'd have to not only play these 4,600 guys, but you'd have to go on the low-owned route. So some of those 3,400 guys that I talked about, like, first of all, you'd almost have to. I wouldn't say have to. This would probably be a really good idea, is to put Simons in this stack. This would be actually kind of fun to put Simon as a low-owned guy. And then we'd have to find those other guys we talked about who were, even from the Minnesota game, who might be the lower owned of the Minnesota guys, that being Culver, maybe. Maybe you play him at 4,800. Guys like that. Now, I wonder if you can get away. No, he's probably going to be too expensive, but I keep wanting to go back to taking a shot with Ayton. You can almost do this, right? No, Ayton's a straight center, right? I bet you can get away with this. Just, again, I don't want to do too much of this, but if I go back and I put Ayton here, is this dumb? Play Ayton? This is really bad. All right, we'll find out. So we put Ayton over there, and then we could put, who do we say? Who's that shooting guard that I just Simons. So I've put Simons, and then you know what you could do? Or you could have gone, instead of that, instead of Peyton, you could then go with Augustine. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you want to find the lower owned guys to make the Portland, New York thing work. Um, maybe you can get away with this. So, like, let's say you went, who was the, Martin we didn't like. It was going to be Culver, right? So it was Culver. Can we get him as guard eligibility or no? As forward eligibility or no? Let's take a look. No, Culver is going to be point guard, shooting guard, and the other guys are going to be too chalky. So again, you'd have to kind of fiddle around with this, but that's the way I would approach it. Again, it's the same as all the slates. If you're going to go with a chalky build, then you have to fill it in with low owned other guys. Ooh, here's what you could do. Ooh. You could play an idiot like Kuzma or something like that. Okay, you play somebody like Kuzma. Then what you do is you put playing two centers is always tough, right? Then you could go to play Mike. Now is where I would authorize playing Michael Bridges, right? You can get that if you need a 3,500 guy to go to him. You know, you can play. You can go play Pat Connaughton, play for blowout run or something like that. He'll probably be not that highly owned. Um, so that's something you can do, just for fun. That's it. So I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting slate. I like it. I like it a hell of a lot more than I like yesterday's. Yesterday I actually did okay. I got like 13th in one of the single entries because I got the Golden State combination right. But I guess that's it. Happy New Year. Hope you get off to a good start. But again, it's just another day. Um, that's it.